This is a box of aspherical eyepieces. So there's 3 eyepieces in the box. There's a 23, a 10, and a 4mm. They're all 1.25 inch sizes. So I received these to review for free. If you wanted to purchase this kit, it would cost you about $40. So in the box, you have a little manual which talks about the eyepieces. So the little instruction brochure is very nice for this type of a product. They have a US-based customer service team. They have a 3-year warranty on it, so it looks very professional. There's foam packaging here, and it has the 3 eyepieces in the foam packaging. Each eyepiece comes with a bottom and top cover. It's not exactly the same as if you had a one of those eyepiece canisters that kind of screws together and covers the whole thing, but at least it keeps the dust out. And this guy here, it says Spectrum 23mm 62 degree aspheric eyepiece, and it has a quite large looking lens there. And then this guy here is the 4mm, and this little short guy here is the 10mm. So you might expect that the 10mm and then the 4mm like that, but no, that's not how it works. So this guy here, even though it's shorter, is the 10mm, and then this guy here is the 4mm. So at the price point, I'm not expecting these to be amazingly great, but the question is, do they work okay? Now, from a weight standpoint, these eyepieces feel a little lighter than a lot of the big professional eyepieces I might be using. So this is 44 grams, this guy here is 27 grams, and this guy here is 42 grams. So, they may not have quite as many pieces of glass, as a really fancy eyepiece. Now, looking at these guys, I had the feeling that they look kind of familiar. And I have actually already had a Starboosa branded eyepiece that's a 23mm eyepiece. And this eyepiece looks very similar here. It has kind of the brass band, the machining looks pretty similar. The optics look pretty similar. This guy does have kind of a fold down eye cup, whereas this guy just kind of has the rounded around it there. So I don't know if these are manufactured in the same factory or if they've just kind of copied this, kind of similar style. But I've seen eyepieces that look somewhat similar to this before, kind of from your not well-known name brands. So I took these 3 eyepieces out and I looked at the moon and I looked at a double star using an 8-inch aperture telescope that has a 2000mm focal length. And so it's a Meade telescope. I compared my 26mm Meade default eyepiece against this 32mm eyepiece from the kit, and they were very similar in magnification, and image quality wise they were pretty darn close. If I had to pick which one of these I gave away to somebody, I'd give them this eyepiece instead of my Meade eyepiece, but there wasn't a really big difference. I felt that this was perfectly usable for that. So I used the 10mm eyepiece and it worked pretty well. The double star got a lot easier to see what was going on with it. Perfectly happy with that. Now the 4mm eyepiece, it was too much magnification for my scope. It's a 2000mm focal length scope, and so we were getting up to really high magnifications. And even with an 8-inch aperture, it wasn't really doing great. Like the moon was getting super fuzzy and blown out of shape, and you really weren't seeing good detail with the 4mm eyepiece. And it really didn't help the double star either. So with that telescope, I just wouldn't use this eyepiece. I think it's too much magnification for that particular telescope. I don't have a different telescope to test it with to see if it would work better with a smaller telescope. So I can't talk too much about the 4mm eyepiece, other than if you have a telescope with maybe a 500mm aperture, something like that, it might be nice to have something like this to complement the 10 and the 23mm. So this is a decent range of magnifications for telescopes. And the price, you know, is pretty inexpensive, and the quality isn't horrible. It's not going to compete with your super multi-$100 eyepieces, but at this price point, it's really not trying to. So I'd say for the amount of money they're asking, it's perfectly acceptable as a set of eyepieces that will, you know, allow you to try a couple of different magnifications on an inexpensive telescope. They were not parafocal, and so when I switched between the eyepieces, I did have to adjust the focus a little bit. So don't expect this set to be parafocal at this price point. So I have much more expensive eyepieces that I'll be using instead of these, but if I were to sell a telescope, I would not feel embarrassed in giving the purchaser a set of eyepieces like these to use with it. You know, they're not horrible, they work pretty well. They're not as good as you can get if you spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars, obviously, but they're acceptable, especially at this price point.